The morning was quiet, too quiet for a Thursday. Ethan pulled open the blinds and froze. There, on his porch, sat a bouquet of white lilies. Dew clung to the petals, fresh and glistening in the early light. No note. No vase. Just the flowers, tied with a pale blue ribbon. He stepped outside slowly, the wood creaking under his bare feet. The air was damp, cool, and smelled faintly of rain and lilies. A smell he hadn't sensed in 3 years. The same kind of lilies that had filled the church the day they buried her. For a long moment, he didn't move. His breath fogged in the morning chill. The ribbon trembled in the breeze, and he saw faint handwriting on it. It was faded, delicate, but familiar. He picked up the bouquet, his heartbeat uneven. The handwriting looped and curved exactly like hers, Anna's. He whispered her name without meaning to, as if saying it might explain the impossible. Ethan looked around the street. The neighborhood was still. No cars. No movement behind the curtains across the road. The world felt paused. He checked the porch again, half expecting to find muddy footprints or a forgotten card, but there was nothing. Inside, the clock ticked too loudly. Ethan placed the flowers on the kitchen table, trying to convince himself it was a prank. Maybe someone from town remembered the anniversary. Maybe it was coincidence. But the handwriting, no one else could write like that. He knew every curve of those letters. He rubbed his face and opened the front door again, scanning the yard. "Hello." His voice echoed back, swallowed by silence. He turned to the door camera by the frame, one of those small motion-activated ones he'd installed after Anna's death. He scrolled through the night's footage on his phone. 2 a.m. Nothing. 3:15. Nothing. 4 o'clock, just the porch, empty. Then, at 4:07, the recording glitched. For half a second, the image warped. The flowers were suddenly there, already in place. No figure. No delivery truck. No sound of steps. Just static, and then stillness. Ethan stared at the screen. His stomach tightened. The flowers hadn't been delivered. They had appeared. He checked the time. 6:42 a.m. He hadn't heard a sound all night. The camera never missed motion, yet somehow, this? Ethan stood by the door, pulse drumming in his throat. A gust of wind brushed past, carrying the faintest trace of perfume. Her perfume. The one she used to wear when they danced in the kitchen after dinner. He closed his eyes, the memory cutting deeper than he expected. When he opened them again, the world looked colder. He whispered, almost to himself, "Who put these here?" The only answer was the rustle of the ribbon against the wood. Ethan's gaze drifted to the faint handwriting again. The ink was smudged, but a word stood out beneath the folds, his name. And right below it, something else. A small, half-erased signature. It looked exactly like hers. He turned toward the table, heart racing. He had to be sure. He'd find proof. He'd trace it back. But deep down, he already knew, whatever this was, it wasn't over. Because flowers don't just appear. And the dead don't send gifts. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the flowers between him and the morning light that bled through the blinds. The blue ribbon fluttered gently, as if it were breathing. He couldn't take his eyes off the ink. The name was there, faint, but unmistakable. Anna. He ran his finger over the edge of the ribbon, feeling the texture of the fabric, the slight indent where the pen had pressed down. This wasn't printed or copied, it was handwritten. And he knew her handwriting better than anyone. The way she looped the N, the faint upward flick of the A. There was no mistaking it. But Anna had been gone for 3 years. Buried 6 feet beneath a marble headstone he'd visited more times than he could count. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "It's not real," he muttered, as if saying it aloud would make it true. He took out his phone and snapped a picture of the signature. He enlarged it, compared it to one of her old birthday cards still stored in a drawer. Every stroke matched. That was when the unease turned into something colder. Not fear exactly, but something that whispered, "You shouldn't be seeing this." Ethan reached for the flowers again, and something small slipped out from the stems. A folded piece of paper, damp from dew. He stared at it before unfolding it carefully. The ink had run in places, but the message was still legible. "You weren't supposed to forget." His stomach twisted. Forget what? He reread the sentence a dozen times, hoping it would start to make sense. The paper felt old, like it had been kept somewhere for years. The corners were soft, the ink slightly brown around the edges, as if time had touched it before it ever reached him. Then his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Just a single image, a photo of the flowers sitting on his porch. Taken from across the street. Taken before he'd opened the door. No caption. No explanation. He bolted upright and ran to the window. The street was empty, the morning sun rising over the rooftops. He scanned the driveways, the trees, the shadows, but there was no movement. No cars leaving. No one walking. A chill ran down his spine. Whoever sent that picture had been watching him. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside, his eyes darting from house to house. Across the street, Mrs. Harlan's curtains shifted slightly, but when he looked, they fell still again. He felt the uneasy weight of eyes that may or may not have been there. Back inside, he placed the flowers in the sink and watched the petals quiver under the faucet. "Who are you?" he whispered, as if the bouquet might answer. The phone buzzed again. Same number. This time, it was a short message. "You promised." His breath caught. That word hit something deep, a memory that wouldn't come all the way to the surface. He had made her a promise once. But not like this. Not something that could cross 3 years and reach him from the grave. He backed away from the counter, staring at the message. The scent of lilies was heavier now, almost suffocating. Then, faintly, a knock echoed through the house. Ethan froze. It wasn't from the front door. It came from somewhere inside. The knock echoed again, soft, distant, and unmistakably from within the house. Ethan's breath hitched. He turned slowly, every creak of the floorboards magnified in the silence. But there was no one there. He moved through the hallway, his steps careful and deliberate. The air felt heavier now, thick with something unseen. The flowers on the counter still glistened with water droplets, the faint scent of lilies lingering like a ghost. Then, a sound broke the silence, his landline phone. A single beep. Then another. The old answering machine clicked on by itself. Ethan hadn't even heard it ring. He frowned. What the hell? Static filled the air, soft and broken, like a storm far away. Then came a voice. "Ethan." He froze. The voice was calm, quiet, familiar. "Don't ignore the promise." He stumbled backward, knocking into a chair. His heart pounded in his chest. The machine clicked again, replaying the message automatically. "Don't ignore the promise." Anna's voice. He'd heard it 1,000 times before, on voicemails in old home videos, but never like this. There was a faint echo behind it, like she was speaking from somewhere hollow, far away. Ethan lunged forward and slammed the stop button. The machine went silent, the red light blinking steadily. His hands were trembling. It wasn't possible. The machine had been unplugged for months, ever since the move. He'd only reconnected it to check the line last week. And now this. He pulled out the cord and dropped into a chair, running a hand through his hair. His rational mind scrambled for answers. Old recordings, glitches, crossed signals. Anything but the truth clawing at the back of his mind. But then he noticed something else. The timestamp on the message read yesterday, 11:34 p.m. That was before he'd even found the flowers. He replayed it one last time, this time listening past her words, to the background. A faint hum, maybe a refrigerator? It was more rhythmic, more deliberate. Like breathing. And beneath it, a sound that chilled him. 3 faint knocks. The same pattern he'd just heard. "Ethan." The voice repeated one last time, soft and distant. "You promised." The line went dead. He sat there for a long time, staring at the machine, until his phone buzzed again. It was from the same unknown number. No words this time, just an audio file. With shaking fingers, he pressed play. The same message. The same voice. But now it ended differently. After the final, "You promised," another whisper followed, one he hadn't heard before. "Check the attic." Ethan's blood ran cold. He turned toward the ceiling, where a small wooden hatch was half hidden by shadow. It had been sealed shut since the day he'd moved in. He didn't even remember having a key for it. As the recording ended, the lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. The answering machine clicked off completely. The air felt colder now. He stood there, staring at the ceiling hatch. For the first time, he noticed faint footprints, dust disturbed, leading right beneath it. And one thing was clear. Someone had already been up there. The attic hatch groaned as Ethan pushed it open. Dust cascaded down, catching the light like falling ash. For a moment, he hesitated, half expecting to see someone staring back from the darkness above. But there was only silence. He climbed up slowly, the wooden ladder creaking beneath his weight. The air grew thick with the smell of old wood and insulation. A single beam of daylight slipped through a crack in the roof, landing on a stack of cardboard boxes. One box stood out. It was cleaner than the rest, as though someone had recently touched it. Ethan brushed off the top and opened it. Inside were old photographs, some bent, some faded. And right in the center, there it was again, Anna's handwriting. It was a note, short and cryptic. "I couldn't let them find him." He turned the paper over. On the back, there was a small map drawn in pencil, a rough sketch of the cemetery just outside town. A chill ran through him. He'd been there dozens of times, but this map led to the far end, past the line of marked graves, to the section where the ground sloped down and the grass grew wild. He swallowed hard. "What were you hiding, Anna?" By the time he reached the cemetery, the sun was dipping low behind the trees. The sky was a heavy gray, threatening rain. He parked just outside the rusted gate and walked in, the crunch of gravel beneath his shoes echoing in the still air. The map was crude, but it led him straight to a patch of uneven earth between two old oak trees. The ground looked disturbed, not fresh, but not untouched either. Someone had been there not too long ago. Kneeling, he brushed away some of the leaves. His fingers caught on something hard. A small piece of wood jutted from the soil, part of a rotted marker, the rest of it long since broken away. No name. No date. Nothing. An unmarked grave. He sat back on his heels, staring at it, heart hammering. Who was buried here, and why would Anna have known about it? Then he saw it. Half buried in the dirt near the marker, a small metal tag, no bigger than a coin. He dug it out carefully, wiping off the mud. It had numbers stamped into it, July 19th, 94. A date. The same date as Anna's birthday. Ethan's pulse quickened. His mind raced. Was this coincidence or something more? He reached for his phone, snapping a photo of the tag and the grave. But as he lifted his head, movement flickered at the edge of his vision. A figure stood at the tree line, still, dark, watching. Ethan froze. "Hey!" he shouted, stepping forward. The figure didn't move. It just tilted its head slightly as if studying him. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it turned and vanished into the woods. Ethan broke into a run, but when he reached the spot, there was nothing. Only footprints, fresh ones, leading away. His phone buzzed in his hand. A new message. Same unknown number. This time, it was a photo of him kneeling beside the grave. Taken just seconds ago. He spun around, scanning the trees. Nothing. Only the wind. The phone buzzed again. Another message. You're close. Don't stop now. The wind picked up, scattering the leaves around the grave. Beneath them, something metallic caught his eye, a small, rusted box, buried shallow in the dirt. He hesitated, glancing at the phone again. Then he crouched and began to dig. Inside the box was a photograph. Faded. It was Anna, smiling, standing beside that same unmarked grave. And behind her, barely visible through the blur of time, stood Ethan. Ethan didn't remember driving home. His hands trembled on the steering wheel the entire way, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few seconds, expecting headlights that never appeared. The image of the photograph burned into his mind. Anna smiling beside that grave, and him standing behind her. It couldn't be real. It shouldn't be real. By the time he reached his house, night had fully swallowed the town. The streetlights hummed, casting long orange shadows across his porch. He got out, heart pounding, and climbed the steps, clutching the rusted box like it might vanish if he loosened his grip. Then he froze. His front door was open. Only an inch, but open. He stared at it, breath caught in his throat. He never left it unlocked. Never. He pushed it gently and it creaked inward. The living room was dark except for the faint glow from the kitchen window. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Hello. His voice cracked. Who's there? No answer. He flicked on the lights. Nothing was out of place. The couch, the books, the half-empty coffee mug on the table. But the air felt different. Like someone had just been there. He stepped forward, scanning the floor. The faintest outline of wet footprints led from the doorway toward the hallway. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. Slowly he followed them. The footprints stopped at his study door. It was half open. He swallowed hard, reached out and pushed. The hinges moaned. The room was cold. Papers littered the desk, drawers slightly ajar, but what made him stop was the photograph. The one from the attic. It wasn't where he'd left it. Now, it sat perfectly centered on his desk, framed under the desk lamp. And next to it, a flower. A single, fresh white lily. His breath caught. The same kind that had been left on his porch that first morning. He backed away slowly, every instinct screaming at him to run. Then his phone buzzed. The same number. He stared at the screen. No message. Just a voice recording. Hesitant, he pressed play. Static crackled. Then, faintly, a whisper. You forgot to lock the door again. Ethan dropped the phone, his pulse roaring in his ears. He spun around, but no one was there. The house was still. The message repeated, distorted this time, the voice deeper. You forgot to lock the door. He grabbed the phone, fumbling to stop it, but it kept looping. That same line, over and over, each playback slower, heavier. Then the lights flickered. Twice. And then a knock. 3 soft knocks. Coming from the front door. Ethan froze. The phone fell silent. He turned, staring down the hall. Another knock. Louder this time. He took a step forward, whispering, Who are you? No answer. When he reached the door, his hand hovered over the handle. The air was icy. Then his phone buzzed again. One final message appeared. You already let me in. Ethan's hand was still on the doorknob when the phone slipped from his grasp. The message echoed in his mind like a whisper from inside the walls. You already let me in. He didn't move. The night outside was silent now. No wind, no rustling trees, no passing cars. Just the faint creak of the house settling around him. Then a sound. A slow drag, like something heavy being pulled across the floor, from below. The basement. He backed away from the door, eyes wide. He'd lived in that house for 7 years and almost never went down there. It was where he stored boxes he didn't want to remember, his wife's old things, broken furniture, the past he couldn't throw away. But now, something was moving down there. He grabbed the flashlight from the counter and slowly made his way toward the basement door. His steps were deliberate, quiet, as though the floorboards might betray him. The wooden door loomed at the end of the hall, slightly ajar. He could smell damp concrete and dust. Hello. His voice trembled. If someone's down there, I'm calling the police. No answer. He pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. A wave of cold air rose up from below, brushing his face like a breath. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, catching on the narrow staircase. He descended, each step creaking under his weight. Halfway down, he heard it again, a faint dragging sound followed by a low thump. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. When he reached the bottom, he swept the light across the room. Boxes. Old furniture. Dust particles dancing in the beam. Nothing else. Then his light stopped. Footprints. Wet, muddy footprints leading across the concrete floor, stopping at the far wall. Ethan followed them, breathing shallow. The wall looked different. Faded patches of paint, a section slightly darker than the rest. He reached out and knocked. Hollow. He grabbed a crowbar from a shelf and pried at the edges. The plaster cracked. Then, with a final pull, a section of the wall gave way, revealing something behind it. A wooden box. Smaller than a coffin, but just large enough to hold something human. His flashlight flickered as he crouched down. The lid was nailed shut, rusted, as if untouched for years. Yet there were fresh scratches along the side, like someone had tried to open it recently. He hesitated. Then, with trembling hands, he wedged the crowbar beneath the lid and pushed. The nails screamed as they came loose. The smell hit first, old earth and something else, something sour. Inside were flowers. Wilted, dry, hundreds of them. White lilies. And beneath them, a photograph. His hand shook as he lifted it out. It was him, standing on his porch, holding that same box. The timestamp on the bottom corner was from tomorrow. He dropped it, stumbling back, flashlight trembling in his hand. The light caught something carved into the wall above the hole. 4 words. Jagged. Desperate. Don't open the next one. He froze, realizing what that meant. There was another box. The sound came again, this time from the far corner of the basement. Something shifting in the dark. He turned the flashlight and saw the outline of another wooden crate. And this one was already open. The storm had rolled in by the time Ethan stumbled up from the basement. Thunder rattled the windows. Rain lashed against the house like 1,000 impatient fists. But he barely felt it. The image of that second, open box burned into his mind. Empty. Waiting. He slammed the basement door shut and shoved a chair beneath the handle, though he knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever had been down there wasn't trapped anymore. The air inside the house felt heavier, colder. The flowers on the porch, the ones that had started all this, were gone. Only the damp outline of the bouquet remained, pressed like a memory against the wooden boards. Ethan tried to steady his breathing. His hands were still trembling when the knock came. 3 slow taps. He froze. The sound wasn't from the basement this time. It came from the front door. Lightning flashed, illuminating the hallway. For a split second, he saw a silhouette through the glass. Tall, motionless, head slightly tilted. The knock came again, softer now. Ethan's throat went dry. Every instinct screamed not to open it. But something else, something colder, urged him forward. He reached for the doorknob, fingers brushing the metal. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer. He turned the lock. Slowly, cautiously, he pulled the door open. Rain poured in, glistening under the porch light. At first, there was no one. Then, as his eyes adjusted, he saw her. A woman stood at the edge of the steps. Soaked hair clung to her face, her dress plastered to her skin. Her head was bowed, her hands clasped in front of her, holding something. Flowers. The same white lilies. Ethan took a step back. "Who are you?" he demanded, though his voice came out as a whisper. She lifted her face. For a moment, all he saw were the hollow eyes, familiar, impossibly familiar. Then she smiled. "You shouldn't have opened it," she said. Her voice was calm, almost kind, but underneath it was something warped, like 2 voices speaking in unison. Ethan stumbled back, knocking into the wall. "What do you want from me?" The woman stepped onto the porch. The light flickered. She held out the bouquet, not fresh, but wilted, rotting at the edges. Rainwater ran down her arms like blood. "They were meant for you," she whispered. "From me." Lightning split the sky again, and in that flash he saw her clearly. It was her. His wife. The same face he had buried 2 years ago. Ethan's legs gave out, and he fell to his knees. "No," he gasped. "This isn't real." She stepped closer, her wet dress leaving dark trails on the floor. "You promised you wouldn't forget me," she said softly. "But you did. So I came back." He shut his eyes. The air grew thick, humming with electricity. When he opened them again, she was gone, the bouquet lying in her place. Water dripped from the ceiling, forming small puddles around the flowers. And then, faintly, through the rain, he heard it, a voice whispering his name from outside. He turned toward the window. There, beneath the streetlight, stood a second figure. Watching. The rain hadn't stopped by the time Ethan found the courage to move. He sat in the dim hallway, staring at the bouquet on the floor, brown petals drooping, the stems bent like broken bones. They hadn't been there an hour ago. They couldn't have been. He forced himself to breathe, slow and even. But the moment he blinked, her voice echoed in his mind again. "You promised you wouldn't forget me." It wasn't just memory now. It was presence. He picked up the flowers. They felt heavy, waterlogged, and cold, unnaturally cold. Beneath the petals, something crinkled. A small, folded note was tied to one stem with a faded red ribbon. His name was written across it in the same looping handwriting he hadn't seen since the funeral. Ethan. His hands shook as he untied it and unfolded the paper. The ink had bled from the rain, but the message was still legible. Come home. He stared at it, heart pounding. Home, he muttered. I am home. Then he realized what she meant. Not this house, the old one. The house they'd lived in before she died. The place they'd left behind after the fire. A sharp knock came from upstairs. 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. Ethan froze. He wasn't alone. Grabbing a flashlight, he climbed the steps one at a time. The house groaned under his weight, wind rattling through unseen cracks. When he reached the bedroom door, it was already open. Inside, the light flickered. A faint floral scent filled the air, familiar and wrong. The dresser drawer stood ajar. Something gleamed inside. He stepped closer and pulled it open. The same vase of lilies sat there. But this time, the petals were alive, pristine, glowing faintly in the half-light, as though they were breathing. Ethan backed away. No, this isn't possible. A voice answered from behind him. It was never supposed to be. Turned. She stood in the doorway, drenched and pale, her eyes reflecting the lightning outside. For a moment, she looked like herself again, alive, warm, the way he remembered her before the accident. Why are you here? He asked, voice breaking. She stepped closer. Because you forgot, she whispered. You moved on. You left me alone. Tears filled his eyes. You're not real, he said, shaking his head. She smiled sadly. Then why do you still keep my photograph by your bed? The flashlight flickered and died. The room plunged into darkness. He heard her voice, closer now, almost in his ear. You can't bury love, Ethan. It finds its way back. He stumbled backward, hand brushing the vase. It toppled over, shattering on the floor. The flowers withered instantly, curling into black ash. The wind howled through the broken window. When he looked up, she was gone, replaced by her reflection in the glass. Smiling. Watching. He turned toward the sound of the basement door creaking open below. Water dripped through the ceiling. The house groaned. The scent of flowers filled the air again, sweet, suffocating. Ethan took one last breath, clutching the note in his fist. He stepped toward the stairs, whispering her name. And as he descended into the darkness, the petals upstairs turned to dust, and the rain finally stopped.